Okay, well, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, all different parts of the world. And I'm speaking to you from Perth in Western Australia today, and I have Barbara Hames with us today. And Barbara's in Bali, same time zone as me. And in the south of England, I have George Paul or Hori Paora, and of course Mariana Kanagaisa is in Greece, and very kindly sitting in for us. We're just waiting for Justin Furness, who's going to join us, I'm sure. And in the meantime, we'll make a start. And welcome to everybody who's watching and is going to be watching on the YouTube channels. And you've got it on Facebook Live and also on Periscope as well. Yeah. So the purpose of the Sundowners is to explore a topic, and the topic we're looking at today is the response going forward for ourselves and for our communities as we're seeing increased restrictions occurring in life. So these restrictions that are occurring can be many and varied. So, you know, we can have legal restrictions, we can have restrictions in terms of culture, we can have restrictions in terms of health response. Obviously, we've had, you know, massive restrictions in terms of, you know, people's movements and ability to actually get around town and so on and so forth, and to be able to carry out their lives. But more importantly to me are the restrictions and the lack of freedoms that are occurring in our society. So the opportunity for people to have free thought, so to be able to express themselves freely and to you know, be able to hold alternative views is becoming so diminished, you know, day by day, and it's getting, it certainly appears to be becoming more and more restricted. So I wonder, you know, if we can just kick off along those lines, and Mariana, if you could just point out if I've overlooked anything particularly that we should set up in the introduction there, or is that a reasonable introduction?
Yes, of course, it's absolutely reasonable, and I just want to start the discussion and throw in as a medical person. I'm a vet, you know, and I know a lot of doctors and vets, and we are all banned. Nobody is allowed to talk about what the virus is really about, that we, from a medical point of view, wearing a mask is absolutely insane because you get infected by the mask. And that all the social distancing is making things worse. And every doctor who is still employed gets banned and is not allowed to talk about that. I introduced one. And they're really facing that they are forbidden to work as medical doctors anymore. And this is some kind of loss of right of freedom of speech that we as medical persons experience now. And the only ones who dare to talk are those who are already in pension, like Dr. Wodak or Professor Fraz or those others. Those who openly talk about, or Professor Bhakti, those who openly talk about what's the topic, they are all not involved in any official work anymore.
They're retired people.
They're retired people, yes.
So this is a huge issue. We've got a professional body of people who are restricted from actually speaking, you know, anything which might be an alternative viewpoint. And so I think that's a great introduction, Mariana, because what we're looking at is it's the right to express yourself, and you know, the way that that's being curtailed. And what we're going to talk about here today is, you know, what can we do sort of as individuals and as a community, as a society. Obviously, we're not expecting, you know, Hori or Barbara or myself to be able to resolve the problems for the medical community, Ariana. But what we can do is we can look at, this expression of freedom, or the freedom of expression, and what that means, like, even within families or within communities, what it means to be able to actually say something which is not very popular. So just ask, either Hori or Barbara, either of you, if you'd like to kick off and just talk about some experiences that you've had about being able to say what you think about culture or society or medical things, or whatever it is that you want to talk about. It's the issue is the constraint, the way in which we're actually being constrained in the way that we express ourselves.
Well, it seems to me that expressing a different opinion, like I was talking to my elder brother, and he is totally supporting like vaccines and will almost definitely have it once it's around. But what really has an effect on me is the way that people take someone with a different opinion and feel that that describes them completely, rather than being able to just accept that everybody has a different opinion usually. So, but that doesn't describe the relationship, and why should the relationship die or suffer because one of those people has a different opinion? I mean, it seems to me that it's brought about this real single focus on this is right and everybody has to do it. But that's, to me, that seems a little bit crazy, because we all have slightly different opinions. And why can't we just accept that? I mean, we're all special people and we all hold our own beliefs, and together they make us decide on a particular road to take. But some people seem to take the fact that we think differently as like the end of that friendship or relationship or something. So the ability to be open-minded and to accept other people's perspectives is really important, I think. If we, I have many friends here who are Hindu and some Muslim and Christian and atheists. It doesn't affect our relationship, but this particular issue about freedom and the lockdown seems to have created a different way of relating. Like this particular thing, if you believe that, then you must be crazy and I can't talk to you anymore. So that's what seems to have an effect on me. In Bali, the Balinese seem to be just so accepting and loving, and I put that down to the way they live and the way they connect and their gratitude, and it's just a completely different culture here, and it's very, very sweet. So I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I've got a question, or the way that I look at it is you have to ask who is behind what's actually happened. There's got to be a greater agenda behind what's happening and where it's come from, whether it's a new world order or the Illuminati or whoever it may be. Because if we address that question, then I think there's a lot of answers that would make sense to what's going on. Doesn't make it easier to accept, of course. And I hear what you're saying, Barbara, about the differences that people have, and why I pointed to where is this all coming from is that perhaps the difference between you and your brother is the outcome of somebody else's agenda, because, you know, you would love your brother just normally as a sibling, but because someone else's agenda has intruded in an insidious way, you just accept that there's a big difference, and all of a sudden what was there before is disrupted. I won't say it's broken, but the warmth of feeling and connection has been disrupted, which is not a nice thing. But like I was talking about before, saying that this greater agenda, I think we have to dig deeper into that to work out a way that we can address it and overcome it. What do you think about that?
Do we have freedom?
Sorry. I've been following all this stuff quite avidly over the last few weeks or couple of months. And I mean, the fingers definitely point at a couple or three people who seem to be at the root of all this. But the point is, once, okay, so say, for instance, we decide, okay, Bill Gates is the person who did all this. I mean, whoever it is. But then what? I mean, we have apportioned the blame and on this person. They're responsible, but it seems to me it boils down to the fact that they've got so much money, and apparently they've made millions of dollars during this lockdown. So these top people, I don't know why. I mean, that's my question, not so much who, but why. Maybe they're related, so they're all about money.
Well, for me, it would be a recognition of what you're talking about, Hori, of the fact that we can't deny the fact that there are big agendas at play, and there have been big agendas at play for thousands of years. You know, like there's been manipulation and so on going on for thousands of years, and it's getting stronger and stronger. Like that power to manipulate, or the ability to manipulate, is, you know, really on the increase. The question for me though is why is it that we're choosing en masse to actually follow the manipulation? You know, why is it that we you know, seemingly, you know, if I think back over the my lifetime, you know, there was all the period of the heavy revolution and all that type of thing in the 60s and 70s, and you know, then all kinds of revolutionary thought going on since then as well, and now it appears as though any kind of concept of freedom of thought and you know, anything divergent is really becoming impossible, and the reaction to any kind of freedom of thought is actually coming from you know, it's the everyday people, as you say, Barbara. It's your brother. You know, it's the people that you meet in the street, and it's not like 1933, Mariana, where, you know, in Germany and people were being locked up for having a different opinion, and yet the same kind of outcome is occurring. Like there's the same censoring occurring without the need to lock anybody up.
They are not locked up yet. Beware of that fact. They are not locked up yet, but already people are threatened by losing the job, and that keeps the mouth shut. And what does it mean when somebody, a doctor who is working in an intensive care unit and knows that wearing a mask is a dangerous thing for people going outside, who knows that his children are damaged by being forced wearing a mask while going to school. And he openly says that on YouTube. And that video gets banned and he gets threatened to lose the job unless he stops talking immediately. This is very close to being locked up. Very close.
Yes. And shameful. It's shameful for the people who accept that.
And I've been talking to Dr. Per Eifler, who is a physician and psychologist, and he has been told to go to the medical chamber because he did talk about the mask thing as well in Austria, and they threatened to take his license unless he signs a paper that he changed his mind. Very close to being locked up.
Yes.
And think of Dr. Wodak or Professor Bhakti, who were virologists or are virologists, very high ranked ones, absolute professionals. And the mass media just makes them look like crazy people.
Yes.
You can't be a professor working your lifetime and teaching at the university and be crazy. This is impossible. And that man openly stands up and says, this is just a flu. And all what happened is crazy. And it's absolutely senseless to do that.
Mm.
And all that happens is that his name is thrown in the dirt. Probably you didn't get all those things because you speak another language. But for me, it was very important to see all those big people being thrown in the dirt, especially as I myself in a medical topic. Finally, we see Justin.
Yeah, Justin's arrived.
Hi, can you hear me?
Well, we can hear you. We can't see you yet, but that'll happen eventually, surely. Justin, welcome. We're just talking. Yeah, Justin. I'll just quickly introduce Barbara Hames and Hori Paora, and you already know Mariana Kangiza and myself. And what we're doing, we're going into the topic of these reduced freedoms, and the topic so far that we've been discussing has been the inability of people to actually speak freely. So like we've been talking about the lack of freedom of speech, and Mariana's been very eloquently describing what's happening to the medical community. So anybody who's speaking out from the medical community in Germany and Austria in particular. And Hori and Barbara and I are more lay people, and we've been talking about the experience that we've been having about holding a different view. And just before we let you loose, Justin, to talk about I saw an interview. I saw a news report. I hardly follow New Zealand news, but New Zealand has a very popular Prime Minister, a woman, Jacinda Ardern, and she's almost untouchable. So as far as the public are concerned in New Zealand, you can't comment against her. And the article that I saw reference was, and the headline of the article was Jacinda Ardern, tears a new backside into this guy. That wasn't exactly what the headline was, but it was that type of energy. And it was, I had a look at it, and she's saying that the guy says, well, why are we still in lockdown, and so on and so forth. This is the interviewer, the reporter. And she says, oh, congratulations on your new epidemiology degree. And this was the beginning of it. And then she just climbed into him. How dare he actually question what the government was saying? How dare he? And this is the famous Jacinda Ardern that we're all supposed to love, and the reality is that she's just a complete bully who's going to protect decisions that she's made. So anyway, Justin is in Switzerland, so but from South Africa originally. And what's your take on what's going on, Justin? And we're looking for things to go forward. Like what can we do? You know, how can we actually shift this?
You know, it's been interesting being in Switzerland. It's curious to me because obviously being South African, having immigrated to Switzerland, living in Switzerland, kind of not being in South Africa, but not being Swiss either, because I don't have a Swiss passport. I still have a South African passport. So I'm kind of, I look at myself very impartial in terms of just, you know, it's not a country thing. It's not a separation thing. It's a global thing that we're all going through. And, you know, from different altitudes and different perspectives, we can kind of have a look at it. In Switzerland here, you know, going out, there's obviously everything's kind of easing off at the moment. But certain things are just not allowed here either. So you can quite easily hang out and meet on the street and everybody gets and social gathers and everything like that. But the minute you do that and have a placard that says, "End the pandemic," you'll be arrested. They'll take you off the street straight away. There has been definitely an abuse of power in terms of authority, in terms of what's happened even here in Switzerland. Very much abuse of human rights in terms of still, I would say, still relatively civil compared to what's happening in South Africa. And I think right now it's a beautiful opportunity and it's a beautiful time. I like to be optimistic. That's not saying being positive, because you can't really be positive in a time that's filled with so much environmental stress and environmental shifting and changing of paradigm. But I'm optimistic because I see such an enormous movement and a pivotal time where if we look at Buckminster Fuller just saying, you know, there's no point in fighting the old. Just build new systems that make the old ones redundant. And I think that's what we're seeing right now, is there's a huge opportunity to move towards self-sovereignty that we have. And because it's now become a globalized thing, this is the time where we actually can make that shift, because at the end of the day, everybody's awareness is on this now. And so I truly believe what we can start doing now is start supporting and start raising awareness and saying, hey, this is a challenge, this is a problem that we have, but this is a solution. I'm not a big person to get behind anything that doesn't offer a solution that only points out a problem. At the end of the day, we need to start taking our sovereignty back in terms of not relying and abdicating our power to become reliant and dependent on certain systems that don't really offer us a benefit of choice. And I think that's what we need to move towards, is a self-sovereignty where we get to choose which systems we want to be interdependent of, not dependent on. And I think right now the biggest moves are start supporting and shifting to networks that are offering different solutions within the paradigms that we want to see and go forward with in the world. Another one is get off like the social platforms that are doing it. There's new platforms coming out like Minds. Minds is a beautiful social platform that is really only promoting and really the demographic there is already spiritually aware. They all offer incredible value. You get credits for offering value into the actual community and into the ecosystem. And it's a very consciously aware platform. And so I think those are the first things that we can really start moving towards, is really gaining our self-sovereignty and raising awareness and saying, hey, that's not on, that's not right, but this is a better way forward. Just my take on it.
Can you tell me more about that platform, Justin?
Sure, it's called Minds, M-I-N-D-S.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And it's a social platform. It's very similar to Facebook, very similar to Instagram, but you actually get and gain credits for the amount of views you actually get And so it's very community based in terms of what it's looking at. It seems to be a very conscious movement as opposed to one, because it's obviously very new, it hasn't quite been tainted by the let's call it the capitalist or the marketing or anything like that. They've moved away from that. They actually want to support the people in the community and the ecosystem, adding value to it, without you paying for people to see your value, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can use the credits that you make to promote your stuff.
And how do you make credits?
By having people view your content.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the minute you get credits for people viewing and you get credits for people engaging, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
And what are the credits? I mean, they don't send me a...
No, it's not money. It's just basically, it's almost like social credits in terms of, hey, if you want to boost this post, it's going to cost you 9 credits. I don't think they really look at dollar values.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really, it's one of the most, and it's been around for a couple of years now. So it's not new, but it's not old. It's not overpopulated yet. And I've seen quite a big movement of people that are being suppressed and are being within their voices and within what's happening on the other social networks moved onto that platform.
And
so
sorry, I guess you can add your contacts to
Yes.
I see.
Yes, you can actually basically go onto Facebook and say, hey, like moving over, you can find me on this platform. This is where I'm going to be posting from now on.
It sounds...
Yeah.
Sorry, George, you go first.
Yeah, I was going to say the great part about Minds, Justin, is that there's no censorship like you have
100%.
Yeah, on the others.
100%.
So you can rant about whatever you want, but if the quality of your content is rubbish,
no one's going to view it.
Exactly.
And so that's what makes it so beautiful, and I think that's what we really need to be supporting or making moves towards, and kind of just building systems that make the old ones redundant and no one wants to actually go hang out there anymore. It's like making the popular kids unpopular. Or just making the new school cool. Doing it that way is what I like to refer to it as.
And this thing that I was sorry, we're all full of words. This app that they were talking about, where you download it so that you can be tracked.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, not sure. I know that Apple have already.
I don't want, but I mean,
yeah.
if you're in this platform.
Apple, no, I don't think that's part of it. Apple have what's more of a concern is the large networks already rolling out within their updates for your iPhone tracking software.
Yeah.
And so that's something to be concerned about, because at the end of the day, like, it's with you all the time. It accesses all your photos. It's a personal device. And so that's definitely starts treading on privacy and invasory issues. And so I didn't see that automatic update though in Switzerland. So I'm not sure if it's country dependent, because of the privacy laws in each country they would have to abide by. Because the privacy and laws in Switzerland are super strict. It's still pretty, like, people value their, like, privacy in Switzerland is a big deal. And so I'm actually surprised I didn't see it in terms of because I had a look at the actual updates and what was in it in Switzerland, that it wasn't the same as other countries.
So are you saying that the software updates for like your iPhone, your iPad
100%
are...
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying.
You need to check what they are.
100%. The latest update in the iOS software already has tracking. It says it in the terms and conditions and the agreements. And so iOS, I think it's 10.3, that already accesses your photos, group photos,
Oh my
identifies, tracks faces, tracks everything. Literally proximity settings. If you go, it'll probably work through the health app. There'll be a COVID-19 that'll link into the health app too. Yeah, it's all. I think possibly they're going to lose a lot of customers in terms of that, and I think a lot of people will switch to Samsung. So if you're a gambling man, I would move my stocks from Apple to Samsung.
Wow, that's scary.
Yeah,
you heard it here first.
But that's where we're at. But that's where we're at, unfortunately.
Update.
So one of the questions that comes to me when you're talking about all of this is, what about my right to actually just stand up and be counted? So, why should I be fearful of the fact that somebody is going to use this information that they track about me? There's this idea of standing up, like facing the music, and what the fears that are sitting behind how everybody's feeling about what you're talking about there, Justin and Barbara, is it's like 1933. This is the fascists are taking over, and we're fearful of the action that they're going to take. And as a Kiwi, I'm sure, Hori, you're feeling the same way. When you're hearing this, you're saying, "No, we stand up. We actually, we will be counted, and they can track us. Doesn't matter. We'll this would be a very Kiwi response to it, a New Zealand response to,
I think that's where the danger lies, though.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I think that's where so many, and I noticed this in terms of the ecosystem and in terms of our cultural evolution, in terms of what we had. And there was a technology that came out. Every single kind of decade or generation has its revolution. That's why they call it a revolution, because it repeats itself. But at the end of the day, it repeats itself differently. We went through the industrial, now we're in the information, now we're going through the health. But at the end of the day, it's always a control system. That's the one thing that's always in alignment, is it's a system of control. And I think what like Bruce Lipton says in his book, Spontaneous Evolution, is we don't need another revolution. We need to start evolving. And moving into a new space of understanding systems and becoming more into alignment with our true nature. Because at the moment we're moving way too into the technocratic zone. We're losing that side of ourselves. Now, there was one piece of technology that came out that showed where the global consciousness was at, and that because everybody gets technology. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, everybody has access to that technology at the same time. It's a global rollout. And so that's what's so interesting for me. And when they rolled out the Google Glass software, that was where you had your reading glasses with the camera attached to it, and it monitored, and it could film everything in your everyday world. And everybody freaked out because it was a huge privacy thing. And everybody went, privacy, 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 privacy. And for me, that was a marker. That was like, oh, okay, cool. So we're still good on privacy. That was Google was too far ahead. They released the technology at the wrong time. That was the indicator where the privacy was still good. Influencers and social marketing and connections had not quite taken off yet, and everybody was still hanging back on the privacy. If they had to have recently released it now, we'd be in a very different world. I think with the takeoff of social and influencers and being transparent, people have given up their privacy now. And so now they've gone, now privacy doesn't matter because everybody's online showing the whole thing. And so now's the time to strike, because privacy is not such a big thing anymore, because it's been the generation has changed in terms of what's okay and what's acceptable. And I think that's the biggest danger that we're in right now. because people don't understand what they're giving up. They just think, oh, if it's location and stuff, it's okay. It's not. It's definitely not. So yeah, but that's the biggest shift that I saw in terms of a environmental marker, seeing the shift in terms of still being stand up for privacy, and now it's like, nah, I'm okay with it loosening up. And that was only a matter of, I think it's been 10 years, and how quickly that's changed in terms of us losing our, like, and I find the older generation want the privacy more than the younger. Let me tell you, the younger generation don't care. And so your millennials don't care. Literally from 35, even 30 underneath, don't care about privacy.
It's a tacit consent not to care.
Yeah.
And the governmental action that takes place is upon that tacit consent.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. But even in terms of, like, we can see that I wouldn't say, I don't like to use the word separation, but the shift in perspective of people, even from the mask wearers versus the non-mask wearers. Those that just cover up and won't speak, and those that refuse and will have a voice and will move that mouth and not cover it up.
The question still is there a third way?
Well, that depends if you want to go down the Ho'oponopono route. In terms of that philosophical action, in terms of just working on yourself, and through that, if we get enough people doing that to make an environmental resonance shift. And I definitely saw that in terms of when Bruce Lipton and Dr. Bouchard did their global meditation. And there was an interesting one that I looked at because I did a little bit of research. There was 2 meditations that happened. There was a meditation by Bruce Lipton, Bouchard, and another lady. And there was another 1 million meditators, one that meditated at a specific time on a specific day. Now, what was interesting was the impact that it had in terms of the Schumann resonance. And so if you had to follow the Schumann resonance in terms of those days and so the Schumann resonance measures the resonance of the planet in terms of how much gamma rays, how much kind of what's coming into the planets. And so there was a huge change in terms of gamma coming in. Now, gamma is registered as huge inspirational insights in terms of meditation and brainwaves.
Wow.
And so on the 1 million meditators a day, I mean, they hit 1 million and over, there was such a huge shift, but I mean, it was huge, like massive but it was one hit. The difference in terms of Bruce Lipton's one is you could measure, and my body still gets more resonance when I talk about the Bruce Lipton Bouchard one, because they understand the science and the physics behind it. And so if you understand scalar waves and you understand resonance and you understand actual what's happening, is they said, doesn't matter what you do, twice a day, 11 o'clock in the morning and 11 o'clock in the evening, no matter where you are in the world, those are the times on your timeline, do it. And what you could measure within this Schumann resonance was the ripple. And you could see it wasn't just one impact, but it was a resonance actually happening. And that ripple effect actually going out in terms of it was just a beautiful thing to see. And how that ripple effect and how it literally changed that wave throughout the planet. And they did it for 3 days. And so, yeah, I think, there is definitely hope. And like, we can't lose hope at the end of the day. That's like, in terms of what I've been seeing in the amount and the, in terms of the breadth and in terms of the mass, how many people are now literally just going like trains out of control, that they're not scared to shout. They're not scared to stand up. They don't care anymore. They don't care about you calling them a tinfoil hat. Whereas before they would be very quiet, now I see so many people shouting out. My wife has never spoken out about this stuff. Now all of a sudden she's speaking out. All of a sudden she's hearing from friends that she hasn't spoken to in a long time because she's been speaking out, that people also felt that something was wrong, but they didn't want to speak out. And so this is what it's about, it's about raising that awareness, but then also offering something and saying, hey, well, here's a different way of doing it. Maybe think about this. What about this? Not shoving. You can't take medicine for a sick person, and you can't eat for someone that's starving. It's pointless. And so at the end of the day, all you can do is plant the seed and say, hey, have we thought about this? What about if we had to look at this? What are your thoughts on this? And offering something, but not making the decision or forcing it, and saying, hey, well, there's this new system that, in terms of, and being that bridge. I see people as bridges, and bridging them to systems that they need, or that they may require, that somebody else may not need. And so not everybody needs the same system. There's not only one road to get to the kingdom. There's many routes, and anybody that says this is the road and this is the route that you have to take, I'm very cautious of, and I typically will take the other route straight away, just out of pure resilience. Even if I know that they're right, I'm just divergent that way, in terms of my programming. And so, and it's to my own detriment sometimes, and sometimes it's to my benefit. But at the end of the day, I just don't like being told what to do. I like to decide for myself, and even if I'm wrong, it's on me. I'm accountable, and I think that's what we're missing. And I think we're missing that. Sorry, I'm ranting. Geez, sorry, guys. I think we're missing that because within our culture and within our species, we've lost our tribal initiation in terms of adulthood. And so all we are is big bloody babies being dependent on systems that really don't have our interest in heart. And I think we've lost that initiation right of manhood and womanhood, where we go out into the wild and we have to be accountable for self, no one else, and learn to be self-aware. Whereas what's happening now is we lost that initiation right into adulthood. And so we've become reliant on systems, and just literally abdicated them up. Sorry, but yeah, I just try to find the holes. Yeah, but I think that's what they're banking on.
Very interesting.
Yes, sorry, Barbara.
Sorry.
I'm just interested to hear, what you're hearing, what like the filters that are going on there for you. What's your feelings there?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
So I was just asking Hori if he had a particular a view, this idea of the self-responsibility is if we were to boil Justin, what he's talking about down into a nutshell here is, take responsibility for yourself, and don't rely on others. So I'm just wondering, Hori, what your feelings are, about those things that Justin's been talking about.
Well, just taking the word boiled, I think that's what Justin was talking about in terms of, it's just like boiling a frog, and that's we've been boiled in this conditioning from someone out there. And like he was talking about Google Glass, that was too big a step to take. Now, if I can just use another analogy, if you're trying to sell a $2,000 program on, positive mental attitude or whatever, that's a big step for someone to take. And if you just talk for 2 minutes and I say, hey, Neil, I've got this great program that's going to help you. It's only $2,000. What do you say? Whereas if I took another route and gave a free ebook, say, to start with, and say, look, I've got this great program and you can get some idea from this, there's some great ideas in that, then I either gave away or sold perhaps a weekend retreat for $100, $200, and showed them genuine value. And provided I've got genuine value or a very focused agenda, then that's a lot easier for you to begin to accept. Have the free ebook, then the little bite of more valuable content, and then I'll get to the $2,000 sale. And that's what's happening to us in terms of all the things that we treasure, like our privacy or our right to speech, all of those things. That's been slowly eroded in a very well-crafted way. So it's almost innocuous. You're not even aware that it's happening. Now, that's not the solution. But one avenue to explore, perhaps, is not to become reliant on things that are out there right now. Look at alternative ways of satisfying your need for an income. Perhaps look at an alternative way of getting income. There's 1,000,001 different online avenues that you can explore. And because of the lockdown, there's lots of people out there trying different things. And depending how much you believe in different people out there, you can explore them and not be reliant solely on what you're doing now. And another way is to not become reliant on some of the things that are being expounded as the way to go to create your fortune, like Facebook ads or YouTube ads, all of the standard ways, all are on the big platforms, social platforms. You have to look at alternative ways, developing your own networks or your own groups. And a great way would be through minds, where you've got independent thinkers, and whatever your idea is, you can present that from your heart and also with great value. And people that resonate with that will take you up on that, and you'll learn through that process. You've got to, it's just a different route that you've got to take. It's a learning process. And because you love what it is you're trying to put out there, it's not going to be a bother. It's not a chore. You just love it so much. If you had your druthers, you'd give it away and you'd still love to do it all. That's the ideal way. But somewhere between that and selling it for 2,000 or 10,000 or whatever it is, I think that's the way, because you're then not dependent of, at the present time, the technological giants that are out there supposedly looking after all of our needs, our mental and economic needs, which, they've got their own agendas, but I think that's a way that we can address the way to move forward. As Justin alluded to, it's a solutions focus, a solutions outcome that we need to be moving towards. And that's in my humble opinion, a way that we can move towards that.
So if you use minds, can it be like snooped, like Facebook or Instagram can? Like, can people say, look, you sold this program, that means that you have to pay this much tax or something?
Can you try another way of saying that?
If you use minds to reach people to sell something,
yes,
can that be seen by, I don't know, the people who are out to get us? I don't know who,
No, you'd have to take them somewhere else at the present time. But don't think that it's all encompassed in one. You take them to your card
website or your online payment gateway or something like that. It's just it's just another social sharing platform.
Right.
And so they can see what you're sharing, but they can't see who's buying or anything like that. They can see who's engaging. Right. They can see all of that. But it's definitely, they won't see the back end of your funnel or your sales process or anything like that. Yeah, it's just just another social platform. But what I think is being said is basically, instead of going to a market that has fish and vegetables and all the choices in the world in terms of what to buy, and actually you're looking for music people, rather just go to the concert, because all the people are there gathered that have that liking or that interest. And so I think what we're trying to say is Minds already has a populace that is already similar minded. And so it's almost like, well, there's a whole population that's there already, that's thinking the same way, that believes in the same things. It's not just a global platform, it's a global platform that's very consciously aligned in terms of the value that it wants to give. And everybody's jumped onto that platform because they believe in the mission and the vision and the value of the company. And that's always been their forerunning thing in terms of why they wanted to launch that platform. And they were right, I think I've joined right in the beginning, when they were first launching, before they actually got investment. Yes.
One more question. Is it an app that you download?
Yes, absolutely.
And who is they? They launched it.
The owners. So whoever the founders are, I think it's a group of minds. It's a group. I'm not sure who they are, what their names are. I'm sure it's very easily Googleable. But at the end of the day, it's a private company. They were private founders. Yeah, they weren't part of any nefarious global funded network or single. It was I think it was two guys or something that wanted to kick it off.
So if I could just drop in here, the like the fundamental urge that we have is that we want to be able to speak to anybody who wants to listen. And this practical way forward, which both Hori and Justin, you're both talking about, and I can see Barbara's very interested in it as well, is that you forget the masses and you go for the people who are waking up a little bit. And that it's fundamentally prickly on my skin, that type of concept as well. Because what about the people who don't know that they could wake up? What about all those people who are waiting for a signal or a chance or an opportunity to wake up? And I don't have an answer to this question, but
it's a great point, Neil. It's a great point to bring it up, and so thank you. Like, that's a beautiful point. I think in terms of when we're speaking in terms of financially and supporting, you've got more of an aligned audience in terms of where to go, in terms of having a higher conversion rate, in terms of people that are already kind of in that market. So you've just niched it down, and instead of going for all of those fish and trying to get the fish to change its current, to move in a different direction, I think that is a very necessary point in terms of getting there. And so, yeah, perhaps it's not to stop using those networks, but to funnel them somewhere else.
So it's a matter of practicality. What you're talking about is that this is a practical thing to do.
Yeah.
And so on. And I know,
but I agree with you in terms of what you're saying, Neil, in terms of, but what happens about if there are fish on Facebook that are just needing, they're in that zone of like kind of being cold. We can look at it at Facebook cold, and they're like, I'm in the warm zone now, and I'm in between changing currents, but I don't know quite what to do, and so I'm going to stick here in this current because this is where everybody is right now, because I don't know anything better. And so I love that, and I think it's very valuable. And so to that, I say doesn't necessarily mean stop using those platforms, but maybe just stop giving them money.
Fair enough. Like Mariana and I have put this platform together, the online summit. We're moving as we're moving, and we're now looking at it as being a future link, as being really the approach of what we're doing. And there's no question it's a labour of love. Mariana and her team, they're based in Greece there, Sandra and Ika, they work 18-hour days, for nothing to try and promote the stuff, to push all the stuff out. And, I'm busy here in Australia doing things as well. But it's not, the thing is that what we're doing is that we're just trying to actually present these range of diverse opinions around these sticky topics. So like that's our intention. And you could look a little deeper and you could say the intention is that we're trying to help people to wake up. But then that has the potential for manipulation and that sort of thing in it. So wake up for why? Like why should I wake up? All of those questions actually sit in there as well. And if, as we're espousing, which is fundamentally the same thing that you're talking about, Justin, which is that we want people to be responsible completely for themselves. So that total self-responsibility is the actual key here. And, with all of that going on, it doesn't make you necessarily very popular. It does mean that you are being honest to yourself. So like you are honestly saying, what it is that you want to say. And we welcome people with diverse opinions on here to look at a topic. And, nobody gets told that they can't say anything. That's definitely the case, isn't it, Mariana? We're very, very careful about that. But it doesn't win you popularity contests to do that, to actually allow the huge diversity of opinion. And yet the whole topic of what we're talking about here is this grotesque loss of the opportunity to actually express yourself. And so it's popular, and yet it needs to happen. Like it's a real tension. It's a tremendous tension setting in amongst all of this.
Lovely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. A lot more people on the forum would be lovely. I can think of a few people who would be, I would definitely welcome on.
Mariana, I wonder if you could just, speak a little bit about what we're talking about, because what Justin's talking about and Hori as well, both of them are saying, get into a process of marketing is a strong word, and it's misleading for the context of what we're talking about, but it is about reaching people. And so if we think about marketing as being a process of reaching people,
that's why I like the word bridge.
Yeah.
Yes, of course. For those who are interested, Minds was founded by Bill and John Ottman.
There we go. It was two guys. Yeah, thought so.
Yeah. So these were the founders. And what I was venturing on now was following the path of self-responsibility and being self-reliant. And we were connecting at the moment to all the communities that are already living self-responsible and self-reliant, just as Tamera, Pachamama, the Anastasia land in Austria. And I think that a network between all those self-responsible communities is missing at the moment.
Yes.
And what we wanted to give with FutureLink and the aligned online magazine is to build a platform where all this community that are already existing can meet.
Oh my God, my whole body just went into goosebumps, like from my toes to the tip of my head. So thank you so much. That would be the most beautiful thing.
And you see, Justin, those people are already self-responsible and self-reliant. That cannot be manipulated and repressed in the way the whole society or one single person can be manipulated. And if we could join those forces, that would be a major topic.
Oh man, that is resonance in my body like I haven't felt in a very long time. Thank you so much for what you're doing. It's huge. It's huge.
and we thought of connecting one thing on top of it. You know, Justin, homeopathy came into big trouble lately. They're trying to forbid the health practitioners in Germany. They are trying to totally repress homeopathy in the United States and in Austria.
Mm-hmm.
Ron Whitman is in real trouble over there with homeopathy and the community they have there. And I wanted to link a part to our future link that is called Save Homeopathy, and do a petition all over the world and unite people who want this holistic system be a part of our medical service, and sign a petition. And I think by doing that, we will already unite more self-responsible people, because going for homeopathy means that you want to wake up and that you want to confront your problems. You just don't want to take a pill and everything has to be solved. You want to work on your own. And if we are able, in case we were able to unite those people, then I think we can build up a force that is more than 10 or 20 or 25%. And like Bruce Lipton already told us, make a shift as a society.
Yes.
So this is what I was going for, but obviously, as the little team situated in Greece, we are too weak. We need people to join.
Every step.
Yep.
Every step, yeah.
So, George, what you're saying to that?
What is the question?
Yes, I wanted to hear your feedback.
Well, my first question is, where can I see what you've just said so eloquently? On what site? Have you got that message etched somewhere?
We are building it up at the moment. You can go to futurelink.earth.
.earth.
.earth, yeah. So there's already a whole bunch of articles there, really good articles, and you know, Justin and Barbara would love to have articles from you both into that forum. But it's already like it's only a matter of about a week that it's been operating. We've got some cracking articles actually already in there, taking video articles as well as newspaper type, you know, style articles. And you know, tremendous opportunities there. But you're right, you know, like your question is perfect, is that it's all very well as saying that the audience, you know, like the people who actually wish to wake up and are appreciative of there being divergent views. Before you came on, Justin, Barbara was talking about the problem that even inside a family, you know, like a divergent point of view is just absolutely annihilated. It's just not allowed. And, you know, what we're talking about here in this forum is that we welcome as much as divergence as possible. We welcome it. And,
yeah, but that's the first step into pharmacology, is at the home when you have a divergent child. That's exactly what happens. Oh, I can't control him, divergence. Where does he go? Psychologist, psychiatrist. What happens? Dosing, prescription. When all the child is asking questions and wants to be self-accountable and is probably showing just an acceleration in maturity. But yeah, absolutely, Neil, like on it, spot on. Sorry, I just get it's one of my bugbears, just because I'm a casualty of that. Was a casualty of that system, which is why I do what I do now. But yeah, that's where it starts, is at the family, even at that level.
Yeah, I work a number of usually mothers, but parents of children with special needs. It was a voluntary thing, and they really needed support to actually get their voice heard in the tribunals and what would be most beneficial for their child, which school. It was really, really difficult to get them into the sort of education that would benefit them, rather than be like just thrown into.
Oh, if anybody understands divergence, it's a special needs parent. Let me tell you, whoa, if you want to meet resilient, and if you want to meet people that have come up against the system, just speak to any special needs parent.
Absolutely.
Whoa.
Yeah. And they need support. They really need support and understanding.
Yeah.
So,
what is it that you do, Justin?
Oh, sorry. Apologies, everybody. Yeah, it's a long list. I've been involved in integrative medicine for over 12 years now. But I founded my own system in behavioral analytics and predictive behavior tracking. And so I have a solution. I have a solution that is the paradigm shift for the mental health institution. And it basically maps, it's a behavior mapping software that maps growth and protective mindset patterns in terms of what's natural and what's natural for you to experience both in a growth and within a protective mindset. And so it gives you your natural baseline in terms of, hey, depression's okay, anxiety's okay, anger's okay, but understanding that it's a protective mindset, which is natural to the human operating system. But to understand your protective mindset patterns so that you actually really know where it's coming from and why it's there. And so it gives you the self-sovereignty to shift it, because you know and you understand the reason for that protective mindset pattern being there, and gives you a solution in how to solve it. And so, yeah, it basically, that's what I spend most of my time doing now. And then that has deeper implications in terms of how far you want to go with the system. So I'll run certification trainings globally, but it goes pretty deep into like soul operating systems and just having a look at soul memory crystals and just a whole bunch of it. Goes very, very deep into unified physics of the soul.
Wow.
And so, yeah, that's pretty much what I do, but mostly functional medicine, integrative medicine, consciousness-based healthcare, performance coaching, sports performance, all sorts, wow. Really. Just, I've been fascinated by human potential my entire life. And so my journey has really been understanding what this whole experience is and what our capacity and performance capacity is, both from a spiritual nature and from a physical, emotional, mental operating system too. This soul trying to integrate with the human body, and the process that it has in terms of how does it all work, and why is it that we are so easily programmed, and it's just the natural functioning of the operating system. And people just have never been taught or given the tools in their developmental process to understand how the human operating system really functions. And I think it's a tragedy. It really is a tragedy, because you've got this human operating system for such a small, finite time, not to understand its full capacity or to be able to operate it properly as a soul. Is a tragedy, because there's just so much potential inside of us that we are abdicating. And I just think it's horrible, because we've demonized our protective mindset when it's there to keep us safe, but we're not understanding what the difference is between safety and security, and being able to shift that, because we are not accountable. We've given up our accountability. It's somebody else's problem, which means we don't have control. The minute you blame someone and you say it's your fault or anything, you've given up all your power, you've given up all your control, and you've made them responsible for how you feel. And that, it's just disempowering, you know. And I think this is what we have to stop. And this is why I'm going so hard these days on self-sovereignty. It's like you get to choose. It's your choice. At the end of the day. And so, it's because we've been programmed from such a young age. Hey, it happens from your parents, the parents' the conditioning that happens at home, firstly, and culturally, in terms of how do I get love? How do I feel connected? How do I get that attention? How do I belong to the tribe? And then in those fundamental years, literally going out into the school, what I get told, what it is I need to do in order to be successful. How do I measure up in terms of that evaluation model? And so we're always being evaluated outside in. We're never, ever, ever taught self-evaluation and how to enhance self. We've always been taught about somebody else's standard or somebody else's cultural measurement of what success looks like. And so we've never, ever taught how to measure our own and set our own standards and our own thing. And so all we've done is been cookie cutted from parental into cultural into educational, and then we go a little bit further out, and then we go into the world, and then we look at other people who are successful and stuff like that, and we start idolizing them. Meanwhile, they've got the complete opposite mindset to us. It's the same thing as what happens if you're an extroverted, you've got a natural extroverted, you're here to share, you're an extroverted personality, but you get born in the culture of Switzerland, which is introverted. What do? It gets conditioned out of you as a young child. It breaks your psyche because now you're naturally extroverted and now you get suppressed. Or if you're naturally introverted and you get born in LA and that's not admired, and you get like at the end of, and so we never ever get taught in terms of, hey, this is me, this is my natural baseline. We're always kind of letting other people set those standards for us. And I think that's the biggest, like, it's just tragic that we don't actually know how our own systems work, how our brains function, how we can hijack the reticular activating system to filter into what we really want to see and what we want to achieve in this world. And I just think it's terrible how we've demonized the human being. We've completely demonized it.
I'm absolutely with you.
Sorry, I spent 4 years, like as a later in life, at my taking degree in primary education, like because I was one of my jobs, I was a classroom assistant, and I thought, well, I could teach. Anyway, I did qualify and taught, but it became clearer and clearer to me that what we actually teach children was so irrelevant to their lives, generally speaking, and was boring, and it didn't allow them to grow, to run, to climb, to be fascinated by this particular thing. I mean, it didn't allow them to follow their strengths. It didn't support them in the strengths that they had within them. It tried to actually focus them on, passing this, passing that, and going to university, rather than just listening to what their real passion was. Because every child has a passion and a strength and qualities that belong to them alone.
100%.
And I mean, I loved my years teaching, and I think children that loved my teaching, because I wasn't quite run-of-the-mill normal, but and I see some of the children now who've like grown up and they've gone into like amazing things, but just generally the teacher training is very much lacking. I mean, and with this lockdown, there's a lot more homeschooling going on. And I think that's a good thing, because they're not really within a school system anymore. And the parents are able to like play with and learn with their child. So I don't know what will happen, but I'm sure that, there are some things that are so valuable and necessary for a child to learn. And they love it. They love looking inside bodies and taking things apart, but it doesn't really happen. Or they love going to farms, and there's no time in a school. So we have to look at what really sets a child alight, like making a telescope or a sundial or something. They like making things and creating things and seeing what happens when. So education, I believe, for a while needs some definite rethinking.
Well, education is redundant, isn't it? Because there's nothing you can't learn in school that you can't learn from your cell phone. It's in your pocket. And understand, I think this is the challenge that we're having at the moment. This is the revolution. It's the age of information, but because we're in duality, it's also the age of misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's actually up to us to become self-sovereign, to actually go and understand intuitively and our own resonance to go, that's not for me. Right. We've lost the ability to discern. Our discernment, our collective discernment has literally just been, here's the cookie. Just eat the cookie. Just eat the cookie. This is all you got to do is eat the cookie. And everybody's not really understanding what's in the cookie. It's like, well, tastes nice, looks nice, smells nice, but actually it's not good for me. And so I think that's the biggest challenge is offering new systems. I mean, at the end of the day, we're in an age of information where a 9-year-old kid, if he's at that level, can go to Harvard and MIT and do any free course that they want to and get an MIT certificate and a diploma and for free courses. Never in our history has that ever been offered. And they can go online at the age of 9. They can start doing artificial intelligence like it's crazy, the acceleration that these kids can get onto that track if they've given the opportunity.
Yeah.
And so I think, once again, it's that, okay, there are systems, there are new ways of doing it, but we've got to get to a place where we go, enough. It has to, and everybody has to make this choice. This idea of, it's only me, what can I do, needs to stop, because actually you can do a lot. You can choose not to buy a Chinese product. You can choose to homeschool your kid. There's lots of things that you can choose that will make a huge impact, because if everybody chooses, then that one person becomes a movement, and that movement towards something that is a higher resonance or a higher vibration is huge. I think that's it. I think it should be simple. It should be simple enough that everybody goes, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, why am I not doing that?
Yeah. I would like to say something to that. Justin, I'm with you. If you want to learn something now, you can do it in the internet. It's very easy. You can be very quick. But I'm with Barbara too. Educating a kid takes a lot of time.
Huge.
And that real education will lead our children to be an adult and not be a kid for 50 years.
100%.
And that's real education, and that is something totally.
100%. But remember, Marianne, that at the end of the day, that's what we've also got to be careful of, because those are such fundamental years subconsciously in terms of that understanding, whether it's the 0 to 9 years or the 9 to 18 years within the education paradigm. And it's so, at the end of the day, what are we doing? We're sending our kids away from home. We're moving them out. We're losing I wouldn't say control, but almost the oversight of who's actually with our kids. What are our kids? What are they learning? It takes a huge amount of time, yes, and completely agree. And not every family can do that, but there are definitely like different ways or systems in terms of how it works. It doesn't have to be done at home. But for instance, my niece was homeschooled, but she didn't do homeschool at home. She had a small group of friends that collectively went somewhere else, and they did homeschool somewhere else together as a group in terms of that. And so mom wasn't really involved, but they were accountable for getting through their stuff, and they did far better than they did at normal school. Yes. But the time factor and the investments is definitely more important. I think just in terms of the actual system on the evaluation is what we're missing. Right? Because at the end of the day, the evaluation, all we've measured is intellectual. Right? We're missing emotional performance. We're missing motivational performance. We're missing practical performance. We're missing our transformational, our spiritual performance. We're missing another whole 4 categories of human operating system performance that we don't measure on or evaluate on. And all of those skills and those performance patterns are being lost because we're becoming more technocratic and intellectual. What can we do? What can we do? Instead of actually understanding, hey, we've got a whole set of systems that we're not looking at. I mean, within the last 10 years, we can look and say, yeah, we've focused a little bit on the emotive and EQ. that's been come out in the last 10, 15 years now. There's been a movement to all like emotional stuff, but it's still not in the education system. It's still no subjects. There's still no actual real performance based in terms of, okay, cool, let's look at EQ and empathy and kindness as a measurement, as an evaluation tool in terms of this person is actually more empathic and creative in terms of that sense than they are intellectual. They have a way bigger range of emotional capacity. And so there's a whole huge, like we're just missing, there's so many pieces missing in terms of where we're at. Like you said, it's just intellectual and that's getting pushed through the machine.
Yeah, and this gets different once we are living in togetherness or in communities like Tamara. That gets totally different from that point on. Paora?
And it does depend on the school. I mean, the school that I was working at here in Bali was wonderful regarding like doing things that like practice their compassion and their ability to like meditate and kindness and gardening, and but it wasn't, wasn't part of a big system. It was a private international school, so they were able to do that. They still had to fulfill some like big stuff, but they could always like slide around that. So depends on the school.
No, definitely. Once again, the choice to choose different systems.
There's a couple of things in there that I'd just like to comment on. One of them is that you're talking about learning the ability to learn. So, this is a fundamental educational requirement, and it's the ability to learn in your emotional center, and your instinctive center, and your moving center, and your sex center, really. It's not only in the intellect, so it's the ability to actually learn in all of those five minds. This is how I would view it.
Yeah.
And you learn completely differently. So, when Barbara's talking about how important it is for some child to learn how to build a sundial, that's actually about teaching them or giving them the opportunity so that they can learn themselves to think with their spinal mind, to actually learn in that way. And, you were talking earlier there, Justin, about, how, the way you view this. It's so interesting how Justin has spent 10 or 15 years sort of getting on such a parallel track to the work that Mariana and I have done, and Barbara's done as well, really. And it brings you to a place where you actually look at, the ability to actually resolve and to learn yourself and be responsible for yourself and to go forward. And this is why we're so strong, with this whole process around the togetherness, is that it gives you that opportunity. And of course, the other thing that you were referring to there is the illness, like the actual issues of illness, are just a survival mechanism. So we produce depression as a way of actually surviving, of actually coping with stress, with coping with overwhelm and that type of thing. My own self and Mariana, we're different but the same. We're both in the autistic spectrum, and autism, anybody who's anywhere in that autistic spectrum, is totally a survival mechanism. It's 100%. Just a way of coping with overwhelm. And so when we're working with clients, we're doing the same thing. We're actually working with them to help to actually manage that overwhelm.
Neil, a question, and this is very curious for me. Do you think that's because of the environmental support that you got being on the spectrum? That you're in the survival mode and it's because it's now become kind of labelized, or do you think it's just because you're on the spectrum that the natural state is to be in survival?
I actually believe it's a response to the environment. So it's the stresses of the environment, and it's a particular stress response. Okay. So the business of the disorientation. So autism is defined by disorientations of different kinds, and Mariana's disorientations are quite different to mine. But fundamentally, we both disorientate when the pressure gets high enough.
Okay.
And it's just a response. So in my case, you know, like I couldn't deal with words and you know, the written words and writing and that type of thing. I just couldn't possibly do it. And when I was being triggered into that, it was overwhelm was occurring. If I was walking down a corridor, I'd fall into the walls. So I was doing physical disorientations as well. So it is literally there's too much shit going on.
Right.
And so therefore I'm going to shut down aspects of my minds.
Right.
So it's a response to it.
And so what I'm saying in terms of that is that survival, because of that environmental stress, if the environment had to be that you were experiencing is what I'm getting at, in terms of perhaps switching it, because I truly believe that spectrum and that autistic, let's call it a label, I don't like it, at the end of the day, is actually a growth mindset. And that's why I always say, like, even with a person that's ADHD, is they always dialed into higher dimensions. And so it's just because it's not normal to what everybody else processes, it doesn't make it not normal to you. And so for me, it's almost like a high spectrum can be incredibly high spectrum growth minded and in a growth mindset, and not be in a protective state or survival state, if that makes sense, in the right environments. And if the difference in terms of experiencing those environmental support systems, if sorry, I hope I'm not.
I'd like to comment, if possible.
Okay, you go first.
Okay. I'm coming from the Asperger's kind of autism, Justin.
Okay, yes. Got
so
you.
The moment I came under incredible stress from my mother and my dad, and they totally disconnected, I just tried to be perfect in everything.
Okay.
And of course, that in my life offered me a very good spectrum of possibilities. And I like my brains, and I like that memory, and it helps a lot. And I like that analyzing character of mine. But in the end, being disconnected to everything and being awkward in social contact doesn't help me. Yeah. So I did analyze even that and said, okay, my way out of that is going into a togetherness, an experienced community, and just test it, at least give it a test. And I'm very grateful to have Ike and Sandra here, who easy for me to start a togetherness because we are quite like-minded.
Yes.
And now I can be awkward, and I can be perfect, and I can be very ugly.
Oh, you are so radiant, Marianne. Thank you.
They just take it, and I'm so grateful for that, because for the first time in my life, I can be who I am. And I can be autistic, and I can be Asperger's, and I can connect. Justin, that is so great.
Wow, thank you.
So the thing I wanted to say was that the gift, the autistic spectrum, you know, the part of it that I sit in, is a total gift, or how it applies to me anyway, Justin. And it gives me the ability to leap completely out of my body, go travel, do things, to be able to see my way through complex problems. The opportunities that actually come out of it are extraordinary, but it doesn't change the fact that the actual process, it was a response to stress.
Yes.
But what that produced was a wonderful gift. It's just a massive gift. It's like I wouldn't give it away at all. Like
but that's what I'm saying is the environments in which it's almost like that pressure came from an outside in again. Whereas if that outside in, there wasn't the pressure, but the admiration, what would have been different?
Sure.
You know, instead of going, well, this is a problem, instead of going, this is a gift.
No, it's a gift of thought.
Yeah, 100%. We understand that, but the struggle in terms of environmental in getting there from how it's been proposed or framed, or what we're basically ascribing to as a collective in terms of what it means is what I was saying. In terms of that pressure, what happens if we had to contrast it? Like, I'm all about contrast. At the end of the day, contrast for me is huge because it allows me to reach a still point of unification. Yeah. And so when I look at contrast, I go, okay, well, if the environment was unsupportive in terms of labeling it as a negativity, my relationship to it as an operating system, because I'm open to programming, and now I think that there's something wrong with me, I'm damaged, I'm broken, something like that. And the contrast of that being, instead of that being, oh my God, you're special, you have gifts, you have abilities, and having that supportive environment instead of the label of there's something wrong, rather there's something to be admired. And I'm wondering how that would shift and contrast the paradigm of self, that self-operating system, that soul that's agreed to come into and try and operate this human operating system with huge gifts, but in the environment that is looking at it as a disability. Because for me, that's a huge task for any soul to agree to, and that shows an incredible amount of spiritual evolution and progression as a soul to agree to come into try and operate a human operating system that's already a default, or that maybe in the environment. I don't see it. I see it as a huge spiritually evolved being. When I look at autism, and certainly with my dealings with it, and has definitely proved every single case to be true. For me, is actually its gifted and its abilities, but the environment doesn't see it as that. And coming in and having a life led by that is an incredible challenge for a soul. And so I praise any autism or any person on the spectrum or anybody that's dealing with any kind of physiological, mental, and we're talking about here genetic, because at the end of the day, a lot of the stuff that people have is actually normal for them to experience. There's actually nothing wrong with them. They just ascribe to something being wrong with them. But at the end of the day, there's definitely those certain things where we see there's genetically the operating system just has what we would consider challenges as normal humans. I'm definitely not normal. I don't subscribe to that box. But at the end of the day, the collective of what they ascribe to being normal is what I'm saying. I hope that makes sense. And I'm just thinking about how we could change that contrast in terms of, well, actually, it's not, there's nothing wrong. This is actually somebody that's very gifted. And if we promote that and support that, how different their life may be in their progression.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Any kind of brokenness in the end is a special gift, and none of those gifts saves you from getting connected in the end.
No, yeah, absolutely. Because that's your natural state.
That's the natural state, yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I went on a bit of a rant there. I'm very passionate about spectrum and just anything like human, I suppose, that we say that there's something wrong with you. That's where I like to go. Oh, really? That's where I like to jump in.
I'd like to just say something. I've got a couple of very dear people that I know, both male, who obviously to me they're autistic, but because they're like, well, one's sort of 80 plus and the other one's about 70. They were never diagnosed as autistic, but it's obvious, like, because my experience and like how they relate, that they are definitely autistic. They also have incredible skills in certain areas, but actually the social contact is still not really 100%, because I don't know, I guess to me it seems as though they're fearful of letting themselves be seen.
Well, that would actually come all the way back to what Justin was talking about, is that our society is pigeonhole people.
Yeah.
And, you know, like it's not given any opportunity for diversity at all. And so we're right back at the very beginning of our conversation today, which is how do we actually allow, you know, encourage a conversation around divergent opinion. And, you know, if ever, you know, like a group of people that are on this call today, you know, we've all got that ability to actually hold a divergent opinion. And it comes, you know, from a lifetime of experiences that we've had. You know, it's,
a good person to actually look at this, Neil, if you don't mind me interjecting, is actually Ken Wilber. And so Ken has a beautiful ways. He's so like, it's not for everybody. Let me tell you, Ken Wilber's work is hugely intellectual and it's heavy. But at the end of the day, he's understanding the human developmental cycles and stuff like that. He's incredible in terms of how we've evolved as a species when he looks at the altitude of the ladder of evolution of our species. And so what he's saying in terms of his philosophy, which is also kind of one of mine, is an integral. And how do we become more integral? And so the integral consciousness in terms of, he said at the moment, 90%, like I think his values, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, about 70% of the world is still stuck at scientific rational. Some of the world has made it out of scientific rational, has moved into the green zone, which is pluralistic, but pluralistic is still separate. It's still in the heart, but it's separate. It's still you versus me. You can have your own ideas, but you're still different to me. There's still a separation that exists in that pluralism. But he says, when you get to integral, what happens is there's no separation. It's you're inclusive in your ideas and in your space, because otherwise it wouldn't be so, because it's there, it deserves to be there, therefore it needs to be inclusive. And so it's this integral thing that's happening. I think a good move forward in terms of approach, and I think once again, this is a human operating system. The brain has to validate its experience. And so the brain has to be right. Whether it's true or not, it has to validate its experience. And so truth becomes, oh goodness, I might lose battery. And so truth becomes a matter of, I'm just going to get a power cable quickly. Truth becomes a matter of perspective, but there are always those universal truths. And so within that, I think it's important to understand that, yeah, the brain always wants to validate itself. It always wants to be right. And so it looks for those things. And so how do we hijack that, knowing that, and how do we put it in a way that helps people to once again be a bridge for them to make their own shift in terms of going, oh, maybe I haven't considered that. Instead of once again forcing someone to take their medicine or forcing someone to eat, instead of trying to prove yourself being right, offer something and say, well, have we thought about this? Have you looked at that? Not saying, you know, like, I think in terms of that speech, that's very important.
Justin, Bilbo Calves, a French artist who lives in Berlin, made a very nice experiment on that.
Okay.
She went through the countries, and with everybody who liked, she did cook a vegan soup. So people came together, everybody brought something, and they just cooked a vegan soup together and ate together.
Yes.
And without much talking about intellectual things, she started with a lot of intellectual art projects around that soup. In the end, she ended up with the soup because only the soup and only the cooking and eating together made the connectedness. It's so simple.
100%. 100%. It needs to be simple. That's what, and I truly believe that it needs to be that simple.
And she came with a big, how is this thing you cook in? How is it called?
We would call it a poiki pot.
A pot, yes.
Yes.
With a very big pot, she came to the villages, and she had nothing but a very big red spoon to tell story.
Wow.
And just one electrical plate to heat it up. And everybody came, everybody brought something. And the effect of that soup was they were never, ever were possible to eat everything.
Wow.
It always was a surplus left.
Wow.
And everybody had the experience of connectedness and fullness.
Yes. And excess and more than you need.
More than
when you come
need.
together. Yeah.
And nobody got paid nothing. So she had, with the soup, she already gave the experiment of a moneyless society, and that it is possible.
Yes.
Yep. 100%. That's beautiful. I'd love to have, what's her name again? I'd love to, can you?
Calves. I will write her name to you.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. That would be lovely. I'd love to, obviously, if she's here in Switzerland, that would be amazing just to connect. And
she's in Berlin, but sometimes she's traveling, and we can connect you on a matinee.
Yeah, that would be lovely.
Sometime.
I interviewed her, and the interview was absolutely incredible, Justin. She's amazing. And she had this beautiful way of describing it. It was even too much. So like it wasn't that there was enough soup. It was even too much. It was just such a beautiful, turn of phrase in English, the way she described it. But she's a very, very powerful thinker in terms of anarchy. And so moving completely away from any kind of centralized control of any sort and just going to total self-responsibility. And, it's in conversations with her because she's a very extreme thinker. But it's just beautiful to hear because it's so pure. The voice is just so pure. And, that's a really important thing that we're missing so much is actually this clarity of
resonant clarity,
and then being able to be resonant. So, that part of yourself actually sort of connects into it. Goes, wow, that's really interesting stuff, Yeah. I'm aware of the fact that we're really running long on time here.
I have to go.
You got about to go. I just wonder if if we just want to quickly go around, and if anybody's got something that they particularly burning want to actually say, and then we should probably draw the conversation to a close. But I'm deeply grateful. I'm going to go first. So I'm deeply grateful to you all for participating in this, and it's been absolutely wonderful. And diversity is definitely the way forward. This is my opinion.
Okay, well,
thanks, Neil.
I'm really, really impressed with this sundowner, I must say. I said to Neil earlier, look, I'll probably have to leave after about half an hour, but somehow it was stretched a little. And it's lovely to hear everybody speak. And thank you, Justin, for mentioning minds and all the other things that you talked about. And I'm very glad to meet you. And George too. You're the man who brings up other things. So thank you, everyone. It's been lovely to talk about something that are also dear to my heart, which is about children. Really, and children are our best teacher, and if we can't teach them, they won't be able to teach us. So, we've got to do something about the training of teachers or throw them out. Anyway, thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Barbara. I'll say something. There was the story about the soup was a classic illustration to me that the total is greater than the sum of the parts. Just the way, bang, it just hit me. I thought, wow.
Yeah.
With no agenda, nothing. But for today, I thank you for the experience. I've never done this, and I'll be studying what we spoke about because there was so much covered and so much value shared by each of you all. I'm very grateful for that experience. And I really resonated with the idea of togetherment and the whole purpose behind what you're doing. And it's supremely admirable. And I'm glad to have been able to share what little experience that I've had to the overall outcomes of what you have. I just had a quick look at your site too. And I look forward to other opportunities that we may all share in the future.
Oh, I hope so.
Yes, absolutely. And one thing for you, Justin, a thought popped into my mind. The SOS thing popped into my mind because there was some things that you were repeating, which was the soul operating system.
Yes.
What popped into my mind was success operating system, the self-evaluation operating system, the human operating system, and systems operating system. So in what you were talking about, the whole gamut that you covered was almost like there's negative connotations to this, but you're like a master programmer having access to all these operating systems that you can almost conduct as part of a life orchestra, if you will. So
yeah, we call it the company's called the technology is called LifePrint. So it's called the LifePrint operating system.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, and so that
makes absolute sense.
That encompasses everything. Yeah, it's you can find it on the lifeprintos.net.
Roger
that's
that.
Pretty much the what we got. That's the kind of certification program and the technology. That's its little identity.
Right. Well, there you go.
But yeah, great. Thanks, George. Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. And so within the system, there's a relationship OS. So there's a relationship operating system. There's a business and team development operating system. And then there's obviously the personal human. So we've just looked at every single kind of, we've got 6 user journeys typically that come to us that we identify. And so, yeah, we just basically have developed operating systems for pretty much what every human would necessarily use in their life. But obviously using the evaluation model of LifePrint.
All right. So I wasn't far from wrong.
No, you were spot on, sir.
Master programmer.
No, you're right in there at the end of the day. And that's what our analysts do, is they help you to understand what your programming is. And then they help you to shift change patterns in your subconscious and move you into a growth mindset. Just helps you to reformat and reprogram and re-educate your operating system.
There you go. Thank you.
Sounds good.
So, Mariano, maybe you could wind up for us.
Yes, I will just summarize the day today. We started from restrictions. We came to self-responsibility and be self-reliant, and we ended in connectedness. And I think that is the solution to the restrictions. When we want to know how to cope with restrictions, the answer is get connected. Get connected to like-minded people. And it's all one system. Another system wouldn't have any chance to break that.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
For being here and connecting.
Thank you very much for the invite. I'm very humbled by everybody on this call. You are also radiant, Marianne. Thank you for everything you're doing. Neil, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for having me. George, thank you for the value that you've added. You tuned in and quite in there in terms of your intuition and spot on with everything that we both spoke about. And yeah, thank you very, very, very much, everybody, from the conversations to education to for all the value that you've all put in. I think everybody here is of the same heart, and I think that's what matters, is the inclusivity of everybody. And so thank you very, very much for creating this platform and this space for all of us to come together and share. My heart's very full. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin.
Good to see you all again.
Hmm?
Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.
Ciao.